Alright everybody, I want to introduce this idea of using Booleans to create and carve out parts of a model. But the thing we got to be careful with is we don't want to carve out parts that destroy our geometry. We want the edge flow to continue to move through the models, the parts, so things flow nicely. So for instance, if I have a cube here and I have a sphere, I'm going to work with the simplest models I can, because it's usually better to do so to get the kind of geometry that you are to be able to manage the flow of the model. So I have a simple sphere here that I'm just going to scale down a little bit. And what you can do with Booleans is I can take this model, and I'm going to, just for safety's sake, keep it very obviously in the middle. And I'm going to go here and go into X-ray mode so that you can kind of see through it a little bit. You can see the sphere inside the cube. Alright, now what I can do is I use Booleans to say this object can be carved by this object. So if I go up to Mesh and I go to Booleans, if I go to the very first option here, Union, what it's going to do is it's going to combine these two meshes, and it tries to connect them with something. So it connects them with one edge going to the corners. Well, that, if we were to try to smooth this model, that does not work out very well for us. This is not a good way to go about this. I'm going to undo this, undo it again. Okay, so we can see we're back where we were. If I want this model to be transformed by this model, I can go to Mesh and say Boolean difference. When I do that, now what it's doing is it's taking the part of the model, it's leaving the part of the model that was inside of the sphere, or inside of the cube, but it's got the same problem here. It's not connected, and if I tried to smooth that, it might get you by, but really we want a model that has much better edge flow, much better components in that. And if I said I want this model to be transformed by this model, I could go to Boolean and say intersection, and all that does is it leaves me the portion of the model that the sphere represented, which was inside. So I'm going to undo that as well. Now, one of the things you need to do is to prepare properly for this type of work. So I need more edges because this model has, and I'm going to turn on wireframe on shaded so you can see this. This model has more edges than the other. I want my box to match that. So my cube then I need to, I'm going to go to turn off X-ray. I need to match these lines. So there's 8 edges here, and again I'm working at a very low level. So I need to have 8 on this. So let me show you how you can do this relatively easy. I'm selecting my cube, and I'm going to change my subdivision widths. I get 1 here, and my depth, I get 1 there. So now I have 2 edges. Now I need to have an edge that comes from the corner out. Now let me show you a way you can do this. I'm going to go to Face, select my faces, so here are my faces. Now if I do an extrusion, I'm going to go up to my extrusion tool, my reset settings, edit mesh, extrude, make sure my settings have been reset. I'm going to say extrude, and watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull this down a little bit, and I'm going to stop just right outside of here, just right outside of this. Okay? Alright, I'm done with that. Now I'm going to go into wireframe here for a second, and I want to take this inner edge. I should be able to grab all of these guys. Let me go back to shaded so you can see a little bit more clearly. I'm just going to grab these guys, and I want them to flow through this model. So I'm going to bring them here, choose that edge, and I'm going to scale them down a little bit. Now watch what I'm doing. I'm going to scale it down so that they're just inside of the model, of the sphere. Okay? So that is just inside of the sphere. Okay, so they line up perfectly in this particular case. Now let's try this. So you can see the inner is inside. I'm going to go back to object mode. I'm going to say I want this object to be transformed by this object. And what I want then, I'm going to go back to shade, I'm going to say mesh, booleans, difference. Now when I do that, look at the model. And when I smooth it, because the geometry flows properly, I have a beautiful edge and a beautiful model, which is exactly what I want. Now that is really important when you're modeling, so that these objects do not distort, and they do exactly what you need them to do. Okay? Now at that point you can do whatever you want with something like that, but you've got to prepare the model ahead of time. Of course you can then add more tension wires to this to pull the geometry out, or you can crease it. If I added more geometry, watch what happens. It'll pull the edges closer. If I add more geometry here on this inner seam, I'll get a nice edge here. If I add more tension around this, I get a nice, beautiful object that if I go in and smooth this now, so right now it looks like this, but if I was to actually go in and smooth this, it would smooth nicely, even at a high resolution. That makes a beautiful model, and the edges all flow, and they're all even and very, very nicely laid out. Look at that. So using Booleans is very important. If you want to use them, you need to prepare ahead of time. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself with a big messed up model. All right, very good.